with me. It's going to be fun. We are going to be talking about how to optimize hormones for energy and fat burning specifically. And as you're just joining us, you can jump in the chat, tell us where you really want to travel, and just let me know that you can hear me. And we will get into the 3 secrets to sustainable success for ambitious women who want to balance hormones, boost energy, and feel confident or find your confidence. I actually want to start us off with one of my favorite quotes of all time, just to get us in the mood, because, as I'm going to share here in a minute, what we're going to talk about and, this approach to your health literally has the potential to actually transform your life. And so I just want to kind of get us proved in the mood, I should say, for that. So this is my favorite quote by Marianne Williamson, and it says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not in just some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." So I don't know about you all, as you're watching this quote has always given me chills and just left me feeling excited about the future, about life, about, why we're really here, regardless of what your belief system is. We are generally more powerful than we let ourselves be. And so one of my big goals with this webinar and with what I teach and how I work with women is to really help you tap into that inborn power that you have. And so I want to take you, in the next, it'll probably take about an hour. In that time, I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step process of how I actually help clients and have helped myself optimize hormones for energy and weight loss. I don't always focus on weight loss, but that's always a piece of it. And, before we launch in, I just want to really congratulate you on, I don't mean to say that, sounding weird, but like literally congratulations on taking time to join this webinar, whether you're here live or watching the replay. I know it takes something, especially for us women these days, to actually invest in ourselves and spend time on ourselves and, commit to something that's about us. And so I just really want to acknowledge you for that. And, my goal is always to provide as much value as possible and have this be something that's well worth your time. So I'm really excited to share with you and launch into this. And so specifically what we're going to be covering is how to go from exhaustion and maybe confusion about what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to start, how you're supposed to do this thing, to really having energy and confidence. I talk a lot about, feeling like the slug or the sloth or the snail and going to a place where you have the energy that you did when you were 20. All right. That's our goal with this, and to have you really, see the path to help you get there. And so what we're going to talk about are the 2 things that are absolutely necessary to find your motivation, key, and to make lasting changes with your health. And the one thing every successful woman masters in order to stay vibrant and energetic and on fire. And I left a bullet point off of there, which is, the hormones that are really messing up and messing with us in this quest for energy and health and all of these things that we really want to have. I'm just going to check in on the chat. Sean, you should see my screen to answer your question. Let me know if you can't, but you should see slides and not yourself or anything. Okay, so let's keep going. So the fact that you're here tells me a couple of things about you. So I'm guessing that you want to have energy and feel like yourself again, but there's always a but. You're completely burnt out, exhausted, and starting to feel like nothing is ever going to change. Maybe you've tried lots of things in the past, but in the past few months or years, it feels like everything you do doesn't work anymore. And you don't know why it stopped working, but it's not working. And you have put yourself on the back burner for so long, you don't even know where to start to turn your health around. This is so common among the women that I work with of, we just go and go and go. I call this selfless syndrome. And we take care of our families and our careers and all the things we do and the volunteering we do and friends and all of this, and we consistently put ourselves on the back burner. And at some point, we realize that maybe wasn't a great idea, but we don't know how to get back, because our health has started to go downhill and we don't know how to get back to who we used to be. And so this is not for you. If, I'm just going to get this out of the way right now so you don't have to spend time wondering if this is for me or not. But, if you're someone who's looking for a quick fix or a magic pill or, that magical new diet to cover up symptoms, this is not that. If you're not somebody who's willing to take responsibility for your own health and do some of the hard work in order to get back on track, this isn't the approach that you're looking for. If you want just another doctor to tell you what to do, that's not me. Sorry. So, and if you're not coachable or willing to do something different, that's, what we're going to be talking about today is all around really making changes for you, but it requires a certain level of work on you. So if that's not you, no hard feelings, you can jump off now. But for the rest of you, I'm assuming that you are the opposite of this person and ready to take control of your health and take responsibility and want to know what to do and want to take control and don't want just another doctor telling you to, go lose weight or something, because we all know that doesn't work. And then I do have a little gift for you guys. When you stick through to the end, I have a simple guide that I put together on 5 simple steps to beat your overwhelm, because I know we all have overwhelm. I've got 3 kids here homeschooling behind me that I'm hoping won't interrupt me while we're doing this. And, we could all use some of that. So let's jump in. So who am I? My name is Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley. I am can you guys see my slides? Let me actually ask that question. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm going to keep going and assume that you can see my slides. All right, so my name is Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley. I am a women's integrative and alternative medicine practitioner. Great, Sean, thank you. And I am a certified integrative women's health coach. And what I've done, so my original hat was I actually am a chiropractor as my original doctorate degree. And I'm going to share a little bit of my story in just a second here, but I ended up spending the last 5 years, and I've been out of school for 9, really learning functional medicine, getting into women's health specifically, and looking at kind of alternative and integrative methods and ways to heal the body. And a lot of it has to do with what I went through, but all of that has led to me working specifically with women these days and creating what I call the Women's Health Rejuvenation process and program. And you'll hear a little bit more about that today too. But, through the work I've been able to do and getting more into this world and moving out of chiropractic specifically and into this world of more functional and integrative medicine. And part of why I did that was I got really frustrated in practice, just adjusting people for the same thing over and over and over again, and realizing that there's more that we needed to do outside of, just what we did in the chiropractic office. And so, it's allowed me to work with people like Cindy, who has tons more energy. She's lost 20 plus pounds and is reversing PCOS and actually getting her thyroid to stabilize. And as she worked with me earlier this year, and she actually told me at one point, she was like, I was super skeptical of working with you, Dr. Alex, but about 3 weeks in, I realized that this was completely different from anything else I've seen out there. And I really appreciated that. And so some of the big wins that she has was she's not at the age where she could go through menopause, but she wasn't quite there yet. We actually got her cycle to come back, and she hadn't had it in quite a few years. And she wasn't sure how she felt about that, but it was pretty cool. And she also, her energy went way up, and she's been able to finish her master's degree in social work and has started, working and doing internship and managing life as a wife and mom with all of that as well. And she said, for the first time, I have hope that I can overcome a diagnosis she's had for the last 20 years and have a new, healthier normal. And she's experiencing what that looks like every single day. So that's the kind of stuff I get to see and do now. And part of why I got into this, is women's health in the United States. We don't realize this. Not many people talk about it. Like, our health in general is terrible. Over 60% of us have chronic health conditions, which is part of why COVID and all of this has been such a big deal this year. But women specifically, 1 in 4 of us are on antidepressants. 78.8% of those who have an autoimmune disease, so about 8% of our population actually has an autoimmune disease, but 78.8% of those are female, are women. 41% of us are overweight or obese, and 1 in 8 of us are likely to develop a thyroid issue at some point in our life. So, overall, if I were to ask, do we have a health crisis? What would you guys say? You can just type that in the chat. I know the answer because I ask this question all the time, but we spend more on our healthcare than any other country, And yet we have some of the poorest health around. And as women, we suffer through a lot of that stuff significantly. Heart disease and diabetes and, the top 5 killers, cancer, are all affecting us as women just as much as they are men, if not more so. Lacey says, yes, absolutely. Yes, love it. Angela, welcome all of you guys. Thanks for jumping in the chat and participating. It's one thing to like show up and watch something. It's another to actually participate. So I really appreciate that. And, appreciate you guys are engaging with that. And, we have to look at, I've already alluded to this idea of selfless syndrome, but modern woman and modern life, like this is what our life looks like, right? How many of you are juggling like 15 million things on any given day at any given time? And the stress is just unbelievable, right? And we're doing all this stuff and there's no time for anything. And it's chaotic. And ultimately that is, the crux of what has led to our health being at the stage that it's at, just with the amount of prescription drugs we're on and, all of this stuff. And so I'm here to share that it does not have to be this way. And really how I got into what I'm doing is I want to share my story now. So this is about 7 years ago. Yeah, roughly. Oh, a little more, 7.5. And this was my first day of work in my practice. So I started a practice. That's my son there. He was 6 weeks old. He was actually born 5 weeks early. So his adjusted age was only a week. But I launched my practice at that point in life. And, I was really clear on that. I wanted to be both a mom and, have my business, have my career as a chiropractor, do all the things. And so I jumped into it and it went well. Things grew, life was good, but I worked really, really hard all the time. I was pulling 40, 60-hour weeks. I would work super long days. And my son was with me all the time, but we would be gone from like 8 a.m. until nearly 7 p.m. most days. And the reality was that while I was, having success in business and doing all this stuff, I started to have some health issues. My hair started falling out. I started putting on weight that wasn't related to all the hormones with breastfeeding and all that stuff. And I, was not sleeping well. And ultimately, I actually started to develop some anxiety. And the truth of the matter was, like, when we get to the real truth about why we make some of the choices that we do and some of the things that we do, I was dealing with a really toxic home life. My now ex-husband struggled with alcoholism, and he had fallen off the wagon about, 3 or 4 months after I opened my business. And every single day when I went home, I never knew what I was walking into, if he was going to be sober, if he was going to, even be there, if he would be awake, if he would have done something helpful, or if he was just going to berate me with a bunch of negative comments. He was never physically abusive, but emotionally very much so. And as a result, I had just this chronically high stress all the time. And I started to have some anxiety. And one day I was driving home and my son was just kind of gurgling in the back seat. He was about a year old at this point. And I couldn't breathe. And so I pulled over to the side of the road because I felt I just had this feeling like if I don't stand up right now, I'm going to have hyperventilate and stop breathing or crash the car or something. Like, I have to get out of the car. And so I got out, and it was this gray, cloudy day, kind of like this picture. And I remember just moving to the front of the car so I was out of harm's way and looking up at the sky and saying, why? Like, why is this my life? Why is this happening? And I realized in that moment 2 things. Number one, I finally admitted to myself that I was not okay. I didn't fully put words to it back then, but I was having panic attacks and anxiety attacks because of, what I was dealing with in life. I was working too hard. Physically, I was falling apart. I wasn't sleeping. I had no energy. It was all I could do to maybe cook dinner when we got home at night, maybe. And then I'd crash on the couch. And I wasn't the mom I wanted to be. I wasn't the doctor I wanted to be. I wasn't, I was not living up to what I had thought my life was going to be, right? And who I was going to be in that world and in that life. And the second thing that I knew for sure in that moment was that I actually had the power and the control to do something about it. And so that launched me on a significantly long journey that led to me getting 3 additional certifications and, learning a lot of stuff I'm going to teach today. And also, developing this process where I can now help other women. And it wasn't easy. And, it took a long time, and there's always more I'm learning and more I'm implementing. But ultimately, what it came down to was, I had to be willing to make some significant changes in my life in order to be healthy and to have the energy and to play with my kid and to feel good about myself. I ended up going through a divorce, but I'm very happily remarried. My son has a stepdad who's absolutely amazing and incredible. I've got 3 stepsons, 2 of whom are downstairs. They're all teenagers, so we've got that going on. But, and emotionally and physically, I'm completely different than I was then. I don't have anxiety or panic attacks anymore. I never took any medications to help with that. I have ways to manage my stress now, and I've been able to completely transform what my health looks like. I'd actually also developed a thyroid problem, and that's not a thing anymore. And I never did any of the things that we always, think we have to do, which is generally like when things get bad enough, you go on meds for the rest of your life. That just typically is how we approach these things. So, what I really want to share is, like, you may not relate to all parts of my stories, but we all have some version of our own story, right? Some reason why you're here on this webinar, some thing that we've gone through, or some point we've reached where we're like, something has got to change. And so, I'm hoping that that's where you're at. And I'm going to keep sharing some stories of women that I've gotten to work with over the past couple of years. But Laverne was one of those people. She came in to me and, she had reached that point where nothing she was doing was working anymore. She was doing CrossFit 3 to 5 times a week and had been eating, paleo for a long time and had success with that previously, but something had shifted in the last year and she couldn't, she started putting on weight instead of losing it. Her anxiety had gone up. She's an associate professor. And every time she had to speak in front of classroom, which was frequently, she would be super stressed out, and it was affecting her social life because she would just withdraw from everybody and just, have all of the stress and anxiety all the time. Kind of reminds me of how I felt preparing for this, getting this PowerPoint ready. But when we do something new, it can be different. And she was also just really worried and fearful that her health was going to decline and she was going to end up, she'd watched her sister and a couple other women in her family, die early from breast cancer and from diseases and stuff that were preventable, but that they still went down that road. And so, we started working together, and within the first 2 weeks, she actually lost 15 pounds. Now, I'm not like promoting any magical weight loss thing. Just when you start giving your body what it actually needs and take away the stuff that it doesn't need, oftentimes you will shed weight rather quickly. And we're going to talk about that in more detail and how that actually works here in a few minutes. But, she also found her confidence in the classroom, and she became ready to actually accept love and relationships and start to trust other people again and really be able to, move forward into life. So, you start to see this isn't just about symptoms and about making the symptoms better. It's really about, like, how do we get our lives back on track to where we can be the person that we're meant to be, kind of like that quote that we started off with. So, you might be thinking, Angela, I'm sorry that the sound cut out. You should have it. Let me know. I'm just going to check in on the chat. Gotta love technology. So just give it a second, guys. And I will send out a replay if we run into lots of issues. But I'm going to keep rocking and rolling. So, you might be thinking, but lifestyle change is hard. It can be. I don't have time. That's very common. We'll divulge that one in just a second. I don't have the motivation, or I've tried everything, and nothing works. And I'm here to tell you that chances are you haven't tried everything in the way that I'm going to talk about, but you do have the time. It's just about figuring out where to find it and how to mindfully create it in your life. And how we perceive things is entirely, dictates whether or not we will be successful with something. And we're gonna talk more about the psychology of this today as well. But if you're thinking any of those things, you're not alone. That's okay. There's 3 keys that you really need to succeed in, taking on life the way Cindy and Laverne and some of the other women that I'm going to share about have, myself included. And, the first is you have to be coachable and be willing to take action. Like, you can't get through, you can't just think about doing something and not actually take the action to do it. You have to focus on progress and not perfection. This is a big one, especially for us ladies. And the third thing is you really have to commit to never letting your self-doubt stop you from having what you want. another significant thing for us ladies. We tend to have this self-worth conversation where we don't think that we're worth it. And we really have to transform that and, be able to look at the progress and not be so attached to, well, if this doesn't happen overnight, then it's not worth my time. And, be able to keep taking those actions and those steps that are going to lead you in the right direction. So those are kind of the three things that you need to be able to do this. You can do this. You can transform your health and your life as a result by following and, starting to take the actions in the direction that we're going to talk about today. So, let's just imagine if you wake up in the morning and you feel amazing. You wake up before your alarm even, and you get out of bed and you're like so pumped up and excited and ready for the day. And you have your breakfast and like you get your kids ready and all that. And it's not stressful. You're not yelling at anybody. You're not like dragging until you get your cup of coffee or your 3 cups of coffee. And everything's just peaceful and you can breathe. And your whole day is like that. Now, you might think I'm, spouting sonnets and all of these things, but this is literally what's possible. And I want for each of you to think about, what would my perfect day look like? Like if I had my health, what would that make available to me in my life and allow me to do? And we're gonna dive into some of the specifics of this. So how do we actually optimize our hormones for fat burning and energy specifically? But, the problem is we kind of have the opposite of that perfect day, right? We wake up exhausted. Maybe you're dragging through your alarm and setting, hitting snooze multiple times, and then you're running late, and then you're stressed, and then, you don't have time for XYZ, and you're yelling at your kids to get out the door. And we don't really take our kids anywhere anymore, but, it's just not fun. You can't get moving until you have that morning caffeine. And then in the afternoon, your energy crashes. You've maybe tried diets and workout routines, but you can't get or maintain the results if you do get them. And your relationships with your children, your spouse, your family, maybe your coworkers are just struggling because you're not who you normally are. And you're always running ragged. And you worry that something's wrong with you and nothing is ever going to change because you can't seem to figure out what the problem is or how to get the results. So let's talk about, kind of the pieces that are missing and what's missing in the approaches of so many out there, including other doctors and the wellness industry in general and fitness people and all of that. We've talked about you have your engines running all the time. We're women on a mission. And I know I'm not alone, whether you are have a career or are just at home, like we are going all the time. There's always stuff to do. And even in the time of COVID and quarantine, there was still plenty to do, I'm sure. And now we've got extra stuff on top of all that. So we got to talk about hormones, and hormones get imbalanced, and we're going to talk about how in just a second, but and we have specific hormones that we're going to get into, but your hormones get out of whack caused by something. And what happens there is we get increased inflammation in our body. We start to get that like bloated, inflamed feeling. Our cortisol goes up. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And so when we feel stress, hormone imbalances ultimately come from we feel stress, and it tells our body to manufacture cortisol, which comes from our adrenal glands. And then cortisol will go and do some things. So it'll mess up our digestive system. It'll raise our blood sugar. It'll raise our insulin in our blood. Doesn't necessarily lead to diabetes, but that's like the first stage. And 60% of our population is what's known as insulin resistant, meaning we have too much being manufactured. And so there's too much in the blood. And so that starts to mess with our blood sugar and all that. And cortisol will actually shut down the production of helpful things like our sex hormones, which affects libido and our ability to lose weight and our ability to sleep, or maybe our cycle regularity and all of these things. And so we have all this mess going on. That's ultimately, they're all feeding off of each other. If we had to pick one to start with, I would say cortisol is kind of the thing that starts it. And so how hormones work in your body is, it's kind of like, if you think about a symphony. I'm a former violinist. I actually still play a little bit. So, I just wanted to put a picture of a violin on here. But if you think about, an orchestra or a symphony and what that sounds like when everything is working together and everything is melding right and everything's just amazing. And, I actually had the opportunity to study in Vienna, Austria when I was in college, and I went to an opera, and it was like, Vienna's like world-class opera place, Mozart's from there, all that jazz. But, I was sitting, in this Stehplatz is called like standing room only. And so I was up there and I was like just listening to this opera. I'd never really liked opera, but being at it live was just like, whoa, it was amazing, right? But the lead soprano singer was flat. And it just messed the whole thing up. And, the Viennese are they'll like critique a world-class opera like we critique a NBA basketball game or a Major League Baseball game or something. And so everyone was like pissed off that she was flat. And it didn't bother me that much, but you have to think about, that dissonance that comes from things not working in sync. And so that's ultimately what happens in our body with our hormones. If our hormones aren't working the way that they're supposed to, we get kind of that like kind of sound, and it doesn't, it starts to shut things down and things don't work as well. We're not in balance and we're not in harmony and sync. And so, stress is ultimately the main thing that is going to start to mess that up, and is the biggest thing that we have control over to an extent, and that we need to really work on. Because when you have elevated cortisol, which is or chronic stress, my story, a lot of chronic stress, a lot of us, a lot of chronic stress. And it's not to say we're never going to have stress, but we have to be able to decrease and de-escalate from the stress. And so many of us are missing that in our lives because we just go, go, go all the time. So when your stress is chronically elevated, it shifts your hormones. It increases your testosterone, which can lead to things like PCOS and some of the, not fun diagnoses that you may have gotten. It increases your pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are the things that cause inflammation. So we're getting inflammation up. It alters leptin, which is our satiety hormone. And so leptin tells you when you're full and when you're hungry. And for so many of us that maybe struggle with being overweight or obese, leptin is always screwed up in some way. And, the main thing that's doing that is stress. And then it screws up our ability to actually detoxify. And so that means that our bodies can't get rid of the toxins. It's going to mess up our hormones even more because there's toxins circulating around our bodies that are creating even more imbalances in our hormones. And we get hormone imbalances from everywhere. It can be, things in our environment. It can be stuff in our food. It can be the lotions and body washes and shampoos, like all of that stuff. There can be stuff in there that messes up our hormones. And then we have stress on top of all of that. So it's kind of like we're stuck in this cycle where things, if we're not figuring out how to manage our stress, things really don't go well. And so when you have high cortisol, you get a decrease in thyroid function, which the majority of women who have thyroid issues experience hypothyroidism. That lowers our metabolism. It decreases our body's ability to actually use insulin, which is part of what gets sugar out of our blood and also helps our liver function normally. And all of, liver function is important for detox and all of this stuff. And then it disrupts our hunger hormone signal and causes us to actually eat more than we need or to emotionally binge eat. We decrease, I already said this, the liver's ability to detoxify the body. And the liver is one of the primary things that is actually, getting junk out of our body. And I'll give you a quick little tip, how you know that your liver is healthy. If you want to know if your liver is healthy, you're having at least 2 normal bowel movements a day. I don't always talk about poop, but we will right now. So 2 normal bowel movements a day. And what that means is, they're soft, well-formed, they're not explosive, it's not hard, and you're not constipated, and you're doing it twice. Most people, we're lucky if we get 1, right? And so that means that our livers are chronically overtaxed, they're not working well, and we're not able to actually get the junk out of our bodies so that we're maintaining homeostasis, which is just our ability to regulate. And then we also get an increase in gut dysfunction that causes inflammation even more. So that's where things like leaky gut or IBS and some of those things come into play, and it's all connected. So even if you have the world's best diet and exercise program, and we've seen with Laverne that she was doing all the things, right? You can still have a hard time losing fat if you have chronically elevated cortisol levels. So I'm going to ask a question here. What, before we keep trucking, what do you think is a way, or what's a way that you can help your body lower its stress? And then I'll give you my top 3, but just type that in the chat. How do you lower stress? I'll tell you what it's not about. It's not about eating less and exercising more. So here's where we really go wrong with, whether it's trying to get our energy up or lose weight. we tend to, as women, we will try to eat less and exercise more. Because why? Because that's what everybody says to do. The MyFitnessPal app, is like, oh, well, if you want to lose weight and this many pounds a week, here's how many calories you will have to not eat or eat, right? And it's usually really low. Here's the issue with that. When we undereat, let's just start there. So when you don't eat enough, your body actually thinks it's starving. And I got breathing practice on there. Yes, ladies, breathing is one of my favorites. We'll come back to that in just a second. So when you don't eat enough, your body starts to go into starvation mode. It thinks it doesn't have enough food. And when that happens, it actually increases the stress response in your body. So it starts storing all your fat so that you have something to burn because it thinks that it's not getting enough. And so what does eating enough look like? For women, we need at least 1,800 calories a day. And I know when I got into the whole MyFitnessPal thing and just decided to track what I was eating at one point. And I was shocked when it was like maybe 1,200, maybe 1,400 if I worked out calories a day. And that is not enough food. And so it took something to really get my body up to where it was eating enough and felt good that way, because it felt like I was overeating for a while, but actually it was just, I needed more. And then the weight started coming off. Same thing with exercise. We tend to think that we need to do long, cardio sessions or be in the gym for an hour or whatever it is. And the reality is that, the only reason, if you think about the way back in the day, like the only reason we ever ran was if something was trying to eat us, kill us and eat us, right? Or we were trying to catch the thing and have dinner. And so what that does is in our old brain, it actually triggers a stress response in the body again. And so, both of these things are completely backwards, especially for us women, because they're not decreasing our stress. Like a lot of us will run for stress relief. And I got in a big social media argument about this with some hardcore runners. And I used to be one. I'm a former marathon runner. And, but like physiologically, what it does to our body is it's not helping decrease stress. It's actually increasing that response and creating even more imbalances and problems going on. And to exemplify this, I want to share Dana's story. So Dana is a fitness and dance instructor and a mom to 3. She owns her own business. And she came in and she thought her gut was off, and she thought, maybe she had some adrenal issues because she'd been feeling really crappy for a long time. She was completely exhausted, no sex drive whatsoever, and couldn't lose weight. And for how much she worked out, she did not look like the person who was exercising that much. So we started working together, and, I asked her about stress, and she's like, oh, I'm not really stressed. Like, I have good relationships. I like my job, love my daughters. I'm good. And it finally came out that one of her daughters has severe autism, and much of Dana's days were spent arguing with doctors and fighting with, the school and with caregivers and whatnot, just to ensure her daughter had the best quality of life possible. And while she didn't relate to that as stressful because, her daughter, she loves her daughter and she was going to do it no matter what, the reality was it had actually burnt out her adrenals, and she just wasn't producing cortisol anymore. So she was also doing some things like she knew how to count all her micros and macros. She did actually know to eat enough. So she was eating enough calories, but her exercise was like long hours, and she would run 5 miles several times a week. And so we really took on with her, we did an elimination and detox and did a lot of that stuff, but she really took on resting. And she sent me a text one day and was like, my daughter just asked me what I was doing because I'm sitting on the couch, and she thought I was sick or something. She was like, I just realized my family has literally never seen me just sit down and relax. And so, as she did that, it took about a year, but her sex drive came back, her relationship with her husband improved. She started losing weight. She stopped running and did more weightlifting, and she had energy again to, travel with her family and teach her classes and do all of that stuff. So we have to create a shift in our mindset. And we're actually going to move into talking about some mindset stuff here too. Let me just check in on the chat before I Jennifer said the doctor in Fairbanks to lose weight no more than 800 calories a day. Yeah. So it's scary, the kind of stuff and I won't say anything. Well, it's not, I'm obviously not in the Western medical realm at all. And it's easy to feel frustrated with what gets taught in Western medicine, what your doctors tell you, all those things. I'm not anti-Western medicine. And anyway, I have lots of friends who are Western medical doctors. However, there's a limit to what they are taught in school And, largely it's about pills. This pill takes care of this symptom. Like they aren't taught the connection between your body and how it works. And even in the wellness industry, a lot of those programs and stuff that I've bought them too, on my journey, trying to figure stuff out, that have you cut calories or, exercise a certain amount. Like it's designed around an old understanding that's mostly based on male physiology. So, for women, it's different. And then there's just a lot of bad information out there. And so it's not necessarily the fault of the people who are perpetuating that. We just have to realize that there's something else that we're missing and all of that. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. So let's keep moving. So, we covered kind of the sciencey part of this, but, the next we're going to talk about the two things that are absolutely necessary to find your motivation and actually make sustainable changes. Because, I'm sure many of you on here maybe you've done the keto thing for a week and been like, ooh, I lost a bunch of weight, but then it's really hard to keep sustaining that. Or maybe you've, tried something and you get like 3 days in and you're like, I'm just going to eat the bag of chocolate or whatever it is. I'm former chocoholic over here. So here's, I'm going to give you an equation for this. Your big vision plus unwavering belief in yourself that you are able to do this equals sustainable change. And so, what I mean by this is so many women that I connect with and meet are, I'll ask them, well, what's your vision for your health? Why do you want your health? And many of them have an idea, but a lot of them really aren't connected to that. It's, we think it's what we're supposed to do, or we're supposed to look a certain way, or, we feel shallow because we want to get back in the skinny jeans or whatever it is. So, you've got to get clear on what's actually in your heart to get you to that level. And an exercise I love to do with this is called the seven levels deep, but you ask yourself why 7 times and just keep asking, well, why is that important? Why is that important? And you'll get to what's actually in your heart. You just say the first thing that comes to mind. We're not going to do that right now, but that's something you can make note of. And then you need to believe in yourself. A lot of us have self-worth issues. We have conversations about how we don't matter, or we're not worthy, or, it's never going to work for us. And we have to get past those limiting beliefs and get into a strong conviction in ourselves and knowing that we are capable of doing that. Like any athlete, any person who really, takes things to the next level has to get there. And it's when you get to those two things that life becomes a lot easier and you're able to make sustainable changes. And I don't mean sustainable like you're doing keto for the rest of your life, but you can just suddenly do it. I mean sustainable like what your body actually needs and what's going to best serve you in that role. And so how I look at this is, the process that I went through myself and then, named and created and take women through now is called the health rejuvenation process. And so in the middle here, the REJ stands for rejuvenated you. And rejuvenated you has to start with shifts. You got to shift some mentality. You got to shift where you're coming from, shift some understanding, shift some knowledge, shift what you're feeding your body. All of those things are in shift. And then you get to the point where you stabilize. So that's where we're building new habits and, cultivating you got to build a new muscle because you have been doing what you've been doing for a long time and it can be hard to get out of that. And then ultimately we get to this point of sustaining all of that where it doesn't become easy. And when you're missing any of these pieces, so those of you who feel like you've tried everything, there's been something missing where either you don't have any results or you feel like you're wasting your time or it is a waste of time or you can't maintain what you're doing. And so, you need all these pieces of the pie in order to get to where you want to go. Davia is another example of this. And so she is actually a super high level athlete. She was a collegiate Nordic skier and still skis like 50K races and wins them all the time and all that stuff. And so she and I started working together and she was super strong. She could hold a plank for 8 minutes, but she still looked 3 months pregnant when, she was 2 years postpartum. And so that was originally what brought her in. So we started working together and really tweaked her diet and she learned some stuff that she never had known or, she'd been very schooled in that whole like carbo load before long distance stuff, all of those things. And what came out was she actually told me one day, she was like, my kids have never known me as nice mommy. I tend to she would just flip on them. and she couldn't control it. That was the scary part. You know, she had no control over her emotions once that happened, and it was straining her relationship with her kids and with her husband. And she didn't like who she was. And so after about a month of working with me, she said, you know, I haven't been doing that. Like my kids, they almost don't trust it yet, but they've been getting to know me as a nice mom. And so she really had to learn how to listen to her body and understand how, you know, her food choices and her exercise choices and all of those things actually worked together with her hormones, and really getting her hormones to rebalance out. And so not only did her diastasis recti go away, and her, you know, that's where your abs separate after pregnancy, but a whole lot changed in terms of her mood stability and her hormone balance and all of that stuff. And so the last kind of piece of this that I want to talk about today is, you know, that one thing. What's the one thing that sets people who are successful with, you know, making changes, with doing this way, with lifestyle, you know, approaching your health from a lifestyle, more natural perspective, lifestyle medicine, essentially. What's the difference between the people who succeed and those who fail? And, you know, the big thing is you got to have a mentor, a guide, a partner, a coach working with you and going through the process with you and helping you navigate when you come up against the barriers and when you know, have questions or are trying to figure out exactly what your body needs, because there's so many cookie cutter things out there. And this is the biggest thing that's missing from so many of those things, is actual support for you, the individual. You know, it's not about what works for like 85% of the population. It's about what's going to work for you. And so, you know, you got to have the help to really help you navigate what are the missing pieces and where do you really need to focus and what's going to take you to that next level. 94% of failure is due to not having a plan. And so you need the plan, you need the framework, and then you need the coach or the person who's going to help guide you through that. This is one of my favorite proverbs that says, tell me and I may remember. You guys will remember like 7% of this tomorrow. Show me and I will remember. If I showed you some more stuff, you'd remember about 40% of that. But it's not until you're involved that you actually start to understand. So you have to be involved in your own health process. And this is where we, you know, really miss the mark in terms of our healthcare that's out there today, because it's very much, you know, dictatorial, where it's the doctor saying, do this, and then you probably go home and don't do it. Whereas if it's led by you and you're really involved in the process, it becomes a lot easier to understand why you're doing certain things and to actually make progress. And we're about progress and not perfection, right? So Kenita worked with me earlier this year as well, and she had a really stressful job. So she was an aide to a state senator, and traveling all the time. She felt like crap. She had super low energy. She was just miserable. She always felt inflamed and bloated. And, you know, we met, and then like 3 months later, she called me up. She's like, please help me. I need help now. And so we got started, and she started working with me actually right when COVID happened. So she ended up being home for a while, which was helpful, but she sent me this picture, the one of her watch on her arm. She'd gotten dressed and she hadn't been dressed in a couple of weeks because COVID. And she put on her watch and she realized she had to take 4 links out of her watch. This was like maybe 6 weeks after we started working together, because her inflammation had gone down so much. And so she, you know, ended up, her clothes felt better. She was sleeping better. She didn't have her 3 p.m. crash anymore. Her energy came way up. And she ultimately decided, she was working as an administrative assistant, but she was actually a life coach. And so she ultimately decided that she was going to, you know, take the leap and get out of her stressful job and just do life coaching. And so that's what she's doing now. But, you know, her husband actually, I worked with both of them, and her husband shared that he was no longer finding her attractive. And like, that's a hard thing for a lot of us. And she could feel that and all that. And so their relationship is totally renewed, and they're doing great. But this is what's possible when you really commit and believe and, you know, set yourself up to really succeed in a way that's going to help you. So let me ask you this. We're going to transition here a little bit. You know, can you predict the future of your health? I'm going to take a drink while you answer that in the chat. What do you guys think? So I sometimes get mixed responses on this. The ultimate answer is, there's certain things that we don't know, like when we're going to die or how or any of that. There's things we don't have control over. But for the most part, we are able to tell, based on our actions that we're taking, what we're doing or not doing, what our health is going to look like, more or less, over the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And let me look in Sean says, yes, absolutely. So I would agree with you. We can. What we have to do is we have to order, tests that are actually accurate. One thing I didn't talk about today is a lot of the testing that we do in Western medicine. Well, good. The ranges that they look at is a bell curve of a sick population. And so it actually has nothing to do with your body functioning. It just has to do with, well, what does everybody else ranges look like? And so that's why you can have symptoms and be told that you're normal or you're fine, or you feel like something's really wrong and you're like, no, you're fine, you're great. So they don't medicate or deal with it until you're really outside of the normal range. So that's one of the things. So we need to look at that. We need to approach the body as a whole, and not just deal with symptoms, but really get to the root of what's going on, what's causing the problem. Like, if you can't tell from this, stress is often a big deal in that, but it's also about identifying, like, you as the individual. What do you really need to overcome the things that have come as a result of that? Let me just check the chat again. Angela says, to some degree. Yeah. So you can. So let's just revisit this really quick. The Health Rejuvenation Program is what I've put together as, a process to helping you get your life and your health back, right? It's what I've walked through. It's what a lot of the women that I've walked through have gone through. And if you're open to it, I'd like to just share with you a little bit more about what that actually looks like and how I can help, because you're gonna work with somebody, right? You're going to do something, whether it's doing what you've always been doing or trying a new thing or a new doctor or whatever it is. You're going to do something. And I would love for that to be me. I'm not a fit for everybody, but I just like to share with you how I approach this and what I do, so that you have kind of all the complete picture of that. So, we talked about the Health Rejuvenation Program. We're dealing with this shift, stabilize, and sustain. And we're really, the goal is to get to a rejuvenated you, where you have the energy and you feel amazing and you can change your career, or you can renew your relationship with your husband, or your spouse or your partner, or you can be ready for a relationship like that. There's so many things and awesome results that I see the women who go through this process achieve. And it's inspiring to me. So it's really awesome. But what that looks like is, when I work with somebody, there's 9 steps that we go through inside of that framework of shift, stabilizing, and sustaining. And so the first row up here is, what we do in shift. So we refocus, we bring the focus back in on ourselves. We have to become important enough to ourselves to do something about our health, right? The next step is revamp. I actually like the word rediscover better, but I didn't edit the photo in time. So, we find the things that help us maintain balance. And, those are specific to us. We bring mindfulness back to our life and to our day, and really take control of our time and our schedule, and get to a point where we don't feel overwhelmed, so that we can renew. And in the renew process, we go through an elimination and a detox process, get inflammation out of the body, decrease stress, get our energy to come back up. In this stage, this is when I get the texts that are like, Dr. Alex, I have so much energy, I don't know what to do with myself. What am I supposed to do? That actually happens regularly. And it's awesome. And I've experienced that too. It's like, whew, I feel like I'm 20 again. And that is the goal, and we do a lot of that through these stages in this process. Then we have to get to where we can sustain it. And so with that, we need some new habits. We got to get our sleep under control. That's the next stage. We learn how to meditate, relax, deep breathing, all the stress reducing stuff that you guys put in the chat, which were great. I saw some of those. Movement, that the next part of that is re-energize, which is about movement that's actually, informed by stress and by your stress levels and by your cycle, so that it's really serving your body with what it needs. And then in the sustain, yeah, that was stabilize. And now we're in sustain, this bottom row here. We're reconnecting to our, wherever your truth comes from. So for me, it's God, but, reconnecting to that truth and our spiritual side, and our connection to really staying grounded in who we are and what's important, and allowing that to dictate, what we do in life. And then repairing and or releasing relationships is the next stage. Really, dealing with a lot of our stress can come from those around us. And so we have to go through a process of either being able to release, like actually forgive, or, move on from, or let go of, or be able to repair relationships that are meaningful to us. And the ultimate culmination of all of this is to reach a state of repose, which is my favorite word. But it means peaceful tranquility in all aspects of life. And, talking about that, like, who doesn't want that? I don't want any more repose in my life. No, I'm just kidding. We all want to get to that state. And so, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. And it's about really being able to put all the pieces together in a way that is individualized to you, but that gives you the framework to know that you're moving forward and doing the things that your body really needs. So what that looks like, if this is sounding of something of interest that you want to explore more and want to know how it would really apply to you, and what's in it for you, and what this process would look like for you specifically, because again, we're all individuals. What I do is called the Women's Whole Health Evaluation and Consultation. And so this is kind of like the initial step, beyond the webinar of working with me and really digging into this. And what we do is it's a 1-hour consultation with me. It's 1-to-1. If you're in Fairbanks, we do it in person. If you don't live in Fairbanks, because I work with women all over the country, we do this over Zoom and connect that way, which isn't quite the same, but we make it work. And then we really deep dive, like deep into what you're dealing with, really getting to the root cause of the problem. And, I use a really extensive health history questionnaire that it's significantly, it'll take you a minute to fill out, but it gives us a really good idea of, okay, where are the hormone issues? Like what aspect of your health is really the most off, and where do we need to start? And gives us that clear picture of, how are we going to get you to your dream? And we really, I get into focusing on like, what do you want your health for, and how are we going to get you there? Like that's literally what this is about. And then if we feel like we're a good fit for each other, I'll share more of what it actually looks like to work in the health rejuvenation program at that visit. But this visit stands on its own. And so what that normally looks like is, normally I charge $287 for that. However, because you invested time in your life today and, really come to a place of understanding and stick through this and all of that, I give you not only a discount, so it's $87 instead of the $287, but I'll actually, block out up to 75 minutes on my schedule. Normally we book an hour, but sometimes we need a little more time. Especially if you have labs that you've had done and you want them evaluated from a functional standpoint, I will do that as part of this as well. And then, regardless of whether or not we end up working together, a lot of the tools I use are essential oils to help support the body in balancing. And so I give you kind of a customized protocol for what you need at the end of that visit. So that's $87. I'm going to share in this should come in the chat, I believe, a link to click on that. And, if you're feeling ready and like this is a good next step for you, I would love to have that be a next step for you and work with you. And I just want to share, a couple more stories about this. Sherry just started working with me towards the end of the summer, and she is 51. She doesn't look like it at all, but she's 51, and she'd really been struggling with menopause and just not feeling well. And especially around COVID, she's just had this lack of motivation and kind of low level depression because the gyms have been closed, and, she's been struggling with a lot of stuff at work. And so we met and connected and started, decided to start working together. And she shared with me just the other day, she was like, I feel like I've learned so much, and this is like, it's sustainable and I'm making progress. She's been able to lose weight for the first time in years. And, her energy's up, she's not having crashes, and she's like doing really great at maintaining boundaries at work she works in a very male dominated area as a firefighter. And she'd been feeling really stuck, and now she's not. And so I thought that was just awesome. And we're not done working together, but she's experienced all that just in the short amount of time that we have. And then Joanne worked with me a couple of years ago, and she actually got off of all of her medications. She was on 4 or 5 of them and lost over 25 pounds in 3 months. And, when she came in, the words out of her mouth literally were, "Dr. Alex, I feel like I'm dying." Like, she had no energy. She was just run down. And she had this granddaughter who she didn't know at all because she never had the energy to play with her and to, do, the things that her granddaughter wanted to do. Like she couldn't bring herself to do it. And so, she wasn't sure. She was like, I don't know, but I'm willing to, she was like, I'm willing to try anything at this point. So we started working together, and she actually sent me a text when she went in to see her primary care doctor at the Native Health Clinic up here. And the doctor was basically, I know you can't really read this, but was basically like, what did you do? And so she told her about working with me and, the program that we went through and how we did things, because she was able to lose weight and came off of she was on medication for high blood pressure and diabetes and a couple of other things, I think cholesterol and a few other things. And all of that normalized in her lab work, normalized from like functional standpoint, not just normal according to Western medicine. So that was pretty cool. So with this, I'm not here to take anybody's money or be weird. So, I'm about providing value to you. And ultimately, if we get to the end of our time together and you're like, yeah, I didn't really get anything out of that and feel like it wasn't worth my time, I'll give you your money back. My goal here is to really help you have a plan and know what steps you need to take and a really clear, path in front of you, whether it's working with me or not. And ultimately, that's what you're going to come away with, and really having a strong understanding of the root of your issue and what you really need to do to get your health back on track and the steps you need to take. So I want to ask you, if we were having this discussion 6 months from today, what would have had to happen in your life for you to feel happy with your progress? And you can answer this in the chat or not, but is it losing that extra weight? Is it having the energy to play with your kids outside in the middle of the day? Is it finally getting off the medication you've been on that you don't want to be on anymore? What is that for you to feel happy with your progress? And just to kind of give you some context, the average person spends $100 to $150 a month on coffee. It doesn't have to be Starbucks, but just coffee in general. And, what we're talking about is taking some time to get a really good, clear picture of your health and what, you need to do to get your health back for less than what you probably are spending on coffee every month. It doesn't have to be coffee. It could be anything. Just think of those little little things. We have a chat. Weight loss and feeling better. Yes, Sean. Awesome. And for everybody, that can be different. 6 months from now, what would need to look different? So I just want to, quickly show you kind of what you're going to do, what your next steps are. You can take a screenshot of this slide. This is the website, or you can click that button that's in the chat, or if you're watching a replay, there should be a button below the video. And it will take you to the booking page. And this is what it looks like. You don't need to be able to read any of this, but you will select, you can select whether you want to do it in person or online video chat. And then it will take you to the next page where you actually pick your time. And if you are somewhere other than Alaska, it will show you the times. You just click that thing that says show a different time zone. It'll show you times in that time zone. And then you're going to put in your information. And you can just give me a little note of what do you hope to get out of our time together down there. And then you will enter your payment info and you'll be booked. And so the next thing that will happen is you'll get a couple emails from me, and one of them will have the link to the extensive health questionnaire I've mentioned. I laugh because it's 11 pages. I just wanted to bring awareness to it's 11 pages. So it'll take you a minute to fill out. But what we do with this is I actually plug it into a kind of visual picture of where your health is at right now and what areas we really need to work on, looking at metabolism and hormones and your gut health and, really getting into all those pieces. So it's really valuable and important. And that alone, I think is worth the time that we spend together just to get that piece of it. So, what would it be worth to you if this helped you get your energy back or finally lose that weight, or get the confidence to start dating again, or, renew your relationship with your husband? What would it be worth to you to have some of these results that you have heard about today from, different women that I've worked with? And ultimately, this is your invitation to wake up and stop procrastinating. People laugh at this picture. It's, the cat has 9 lives, right? And at some point, something has to come and impact us and have us get up off the couch and put down the remote, and put down the things that aren't serving our bodies and start to do something differently. And so this is really your opportunity to take a step in that direction, put a little skin in the game, and, get yourself set on the right track and maybe get some of the answers that you've been wanting to find but haven't been able to. So, we can all agree, I'm guessing that you're here and you're still on here, you're experiencing some low energy, some hormone imbalance, generally not feeling great and like you'd like to, and you want to feel like yourself again, or even to, feel like a new version of you, kind of create who that is. You want to be able to play with your kids or do your hobbies again, enjoy life. I've had everyone from wanting to just have the energy to like go outside with their grandkids or their kids to wanting to train to climb Mount Kilimanjaro because that's a bucket list dream. Like, you just want to be able to do that stuff. And this is your opportunity to do that. And it's not just any typical doctor's visit, right? We have something completely different. So you ultimately, you have two options at this point. You can either keep doing what you've been doing, which I'm guessing has, like I experienced, led to, purchasing lots of kind of low cost programs or books, or, trying this new thing, or whatever the next fad diet, silver bullet, whatever the thing is, right? You can keep doing that, or going to the doctors who consistently just don't give you any answers and you feel frustrated by that. Or you can try something completely different and outside of the box and, invest a little bit in yourself and get to the point that you actually want to get to with your health and with your life. The choice is really yours. And that's the big thing. You have a choice. So much in healthcare, we think we don't have a choice. It's like, well, my insurance doesn't cover that. And Western healthcare is designed that way, I will say. They like to not give you choices, but ultimately the choice is yours. And you have the choice to either take control, take responsibility, and do something differently, or to keep going down the road that just leaves you frustrated. And again, there's no risk to you in this. If we get to the end and it wasn't what you were hoping it would be, I will give you your money back. No questions asked, no issue there. So just to recap, we've got the first step. The next step is just the consultation and evaluation. And we really get a clear picture on you, where your health is at, where you're going, what that looks like visually. My child is interrupting me. And if we're a good fit, then we'll talk about what the next steps in terms of working with me specifically are from there, but you'll still leave that knowing exactly what your next steps are. And then again, I'm going to, give you up to 75 minutes and go over any labs you have and, do this customized essential oil support for you at the end of our time together, and just really make it specific to what you actually need. And it's $87 instead of $287. So if you haven't yet and you're ready, go ahead and click that link, follow the steps to book. And then I just wanted to quickly, before we wrap up, cover some of the common questions that I get. And I have 3 of them here. And at this point, if you have other questions, you can type them in the chat, and I'll kind of hang out for a minute to answer some of those. But the number one question is, do you take insurance? Here's my response to this. As much as I would love to, and I will say there are certain insurance companies that recently, whether it's through an HSA or something else, have started to reimburse for some of the stuff that I do. I do not bill them directly. And for the most part, I would say what I do is not covered by insurance. But with that, we can talk about you specifically when you come in and just get a good idea with that. I don't deal with it at all anymore, because I got tired of being told what I couldn't do as a physician and as a user. The insurance is a big racket of, them trying to make money and make life difficult. So that answers that question. The second question I usually get is, do I need to live in Alaska, or where am I? So I obviously am in Fairbanks, Alaska. If you don't live here, that's okay. I work remotely with women all over the country. I've got clients in Illinois and Arizona and Vermont and literally everywhere. We just do everything via Zoom. So as long as you're good with that, we can work together. And then the third question is generally, what happens after the initial consult? And so from there, we go one of 2 ways. Ultimately, either we decide that working together makes sense for both of us, we're a good fit. I don't take on everyone, and I'm, am limited in how many people I can work with at a time. So at the moment, I've got about 10 spots available that I have open to, taking on new clients. And so from there, we talk about what's going to be the best fit. And so I have programs that range from just doing an elimination and detox, if we really just need to focus on gut health, to doing the full, 9 steps that we talked about. And that the length and duration of that can vary just based on the person. So that can be anywhere from 3 to 9 months. And so we talk about exactly what all that looks like. And ultimately you get to choose. I'll recommend just based on, what we uncover and where you're at and what your goals are, like what I think is what it's going to take. But ultimately it's your choice, how you proceed, whether it's with me and one of those options or with doing it on your own, which I don't always recommend. But yeah, so with that, I will continue to hang around if there are other questions that anyone wants to type in the chat. But I just want to say thank you. This is an hour and some minutes at this point, hour and 8. And, if you've made it to the end, I just want to acknowledge you for sticking around, for really investing in yourself and your health, because time is an investment too. It's not always just about money. Time is a big deal as well. So I really look forward to, meeting you, working with you, helping you figure out your path and your route to having that energy of a 20-year-old, because it's a thing. And just really appreciate you taking the time. So I'll hang out for just a second if there's any questions, but otherwise we will go ahead and wrap up